I'm really excited to begin this project. It's going to be the first time I've attempted to mass produce something for sale. I've just become a sponsor of the OzGeoMuster down in Wollongong this July, and that kind of means we're going to have some stuff to sell. The first thing will naturally be a Pathtag holder. But unlike my giant Geocoin Australia Pathtag holder, which took an awful lot of pain and suffering, even though the result looks good, these need to be quick and easy for me to knock out, but still a nice high quality product for my fellow geocachers, so they might enjoy them and maybe flip me a few coins. Geocaching is a free hobby, so switching over to woodworking, which is definitely not a free hobby, I do require a little bit of income to help support this and in turn help support the community. Plus, these things should be really cool, and as far as I can tell, there's no one in Australia making them. These Pathtag holders will hold 15 tags, and if I'm very clever, 3 Geocoins as well. I've knocked up a quick template on SketchUp, and I'm going to use this to make a template out of my template so I can do this nice and fast. With the template attached and glued down, now I can use my awl to mark the center points, which will give a start for the Forstner bit. This is where I want to be really accurate so that the holes end up lining up on the final. So now I've got my 30mm Forstner bit onto the drill. I have struggled with MDF with this thing on the past. It just doesn't seem to clear out well, so this could take a while, but I want to be very careful and get these as lined up as possible. Because I'm doing a geometric shape here, it's actually harder than the Australian Pathtag holder where the position didn't really matter, because if these don't line up closely, it's going to look weird. So let's try and be as accurate as we can. The only other thing I'm worried about is just how strong this joint here is going to be. So let's see if we don't blow it out or not. Good double negative. I've always been told you need to use the Forstner bits on a fairly slow speed, and because I was worried about blowout, I started all these holes on a slow speed. But the fast speed is a lot better. There we go. That is my template for cutting the template holes, and it's turned out pretty well. This is 9mm MDF, just offcuts I've had from other projects, and you can see the routing that I did on the back of it. That has worked out fine, so now I can use this as my guide for my router, and they do look pretty even. Not perfect as usual, but good enough for me. Let's see how this turns out on the pine. Right, so it turns out that as usual, you should measure things more carefully. I'm looking at you, Ren, in your picture frame. Here we have a slight problem with my design. That's how I need to clamp it, and even sideways, I simply didn't have enough room for the router to get these edge ones. As the whole point of this thing is meant to be to make my life easy and quick, because time is money when you're making stuff to sell, I decided in the long run it would be much, much faster to just do it again on a longer board. I've added about 1 inch either side, and that now gives me the space that I need when it's clamped down to route without having to move the bloody clamps. Next up, we're going to grab our pine. I could do this in hardwood too, but I want to keep the cost down, at least for this first run, because I don't want to charge people too much for what they're doing. While I am, of course, in this to make some money, I don't want to rip off my geocaching friends. For the moment, pine will do. Here we have got marked out 10 of the Pathtag holders. I've done them in what's called the golden ratio. It's approximately 1.61. It's a naturally occurring repetitive pattern that you'll see all over the place. Google it, you'll be amazed how often this number shows up in nature. From an artistic point of view, it makes aesthetically pleasing spirals and rectangles. So that's how I've chosen this design. So really, this is where I'm going to time myself, because as we said, time is money. And as much as I am having fun doing this, this isn't meant for charity, this is meant for profit. And what I want to do is time that now I have basically a store-bought piece of wood and a jig set up. If I was to manufacture these, well, I am going to manufacture these, how quickly I can make them. And that way I can work out how much I have to charge in order to make this worth my time. It's an interesting topic really, woodworking and profit. As many people probably tell you, don't get into woodworking to make a profit because it's incredibly difficult. Unless you're selling very high-end stuff, you're only one man or woman manufacturing something that takes time, and to get an hourly rate out of it, very, very difficult. Knocking out small-scale things like this, honestly, I'm just doing it to make a bit of money, to sponsor my trip to the OzGeoMuster, but also to help pay for the other skills and tools and things that I'm acquiring, which will help me with my real business of Fixit Fingers doing the property maintenance around my building. So the skills are transferable, but the money's just there as a subsidy, really. Right, enough jibber jabber. Let's go to clamp and route mode and start the clock really to see how quickly I can get these done. Fortunately, I quickly thought of something before I started this work, and that was that I actually need to compensate for the width of my circular saw blade when I chop these all out once the holes are done. Now that's important because while it's only a millimeter or two over 5 boards, it would add up and I would probably run into some symmetry problems. So just quickly erased and remarked those. Right. Right, so I was being fairly slow and cautious there, just doing the first one. The depth is really good, I like that quite a bit. However, that took a few minutes. I should be able to get faster now that I've got my confidence up and know that it works. And we'll be able to chop these up. That's the last one done, thank God. However, it is important, and what I've been doing between moving every clamp is, it only takes a few seconds, grabbing all the Pathtags and dropping them in to make sure that the holes are cut perfectly. Because what can happen is just some sawdust can get caught in there and stop the router bit from moving in a perfect circle. And this time, of course, I've managed to luck out and did it right the first time. Otherwise, I was just quickly cleaning them up. Take those clamps off. Grab a stack of magnets. That makes picking those all up pretty easy. Fantastic. Well, I think I'll cut these out before I sand them, and then we can start the next party trick, which is finding a way to get some geocoins to stick to these as well. By far the easiest way I found to cut small pieces of wood that you don't want to fall into the floor is just to set the blade depth to a B-stick below the width of the board and cut into it slightly. This is just a trash board that I use as a bench top, so I don't really care if it gets score marks, and it makes life a lot easier. There we go. Approaching their final shape. Don't look too pretty yet, but at least we can see what they are going to come out like. But I'm pretty happy with how those have come out. Not bad for a first attempt at mass production. Right, next up, it's time to add one final little party trick which will give dual functionality to the Pathtag holder, and that is this groove. You see my setup here, I've got two fences and I've luckily managed to score it pretty quickly of getting exactly the right distance between them to give an even cut. I've got a 3mm straight bit set into the router, and that groove is going to be for these. So these are Geocoins. Unlike the Pathtags, they're not ferrous, so magnets won't work on them, which means I need to figure out another way to display them. Now, Geocoin holders just purely is something I might go into because not everyone collects Pathtags, but this one's going to be dual purpose. And there you go, it'll hold 3 or 4 depending on the size, so when that's mounted on the wall, they should just sit in there quite snugly. Now the next bit is fairly easy. I've got my chamfer bit set in there to give a nice profile to the front edge of most of these boards. That will get these almost to completion. I haven't decided if I'm going to profile the back. I may put a small round over on them just to get rid of the sharp edges. Might also point out too that I offset this groove. It's not exactly center because I'm going to lose about 5mm of material here, so I didn't want the chamfer cutting into that. So you actually do think ahead sometimes. And the last piece of routing for this project, I've got my keyhole bit. I've managed to set up 2 stop blocks, not fences like I said last time, in order to cut the mounting for these Pathtag holders. So I've sanded out my grooves here just by hand. The only thing I haven't done is really sanded the front because I'm going to do the magnet holes first and then this will all get sanded at the same time. For both the holes and the sanding, I'm going to use the Dremel. Saw this on the Australia Pathtag holder. I already made my little jig. That Pathtag stuck down there with a hole through the middle of it, sits into these little holes on here, and then the Dremel bit will go through and it's a 1/4 second on and off in order to get the correct depth and size for my magnets. Shouldn't take too long, even on the 150 holes I have here. Bang, 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 one after the other.
Well, that's a little bit anticlimactic as I forgot to film the last bit, but basically just glued the magnets in with some super glue and then finished off with Danish oil. And here is the finished product. They came out pretty schmick. I've got these for sale up on Facebook already. You'll save yourself $5 if you pre-order them before the mega. Otherwise, they will be on sale at the show in July, and I hope to see you there. Check you next time.